Testing, test, test, test. Oh, dude, I think it worked. How about that?
The beginnings of this record came when I came up with a song idea for a painting that was so realistic that it took you to the place that it was depicting. And I had that idea about a year before I even released my first record, and I was sitting on it for a couple months. I couldn't find the exact painting to write about, and then suddenly after some searching I found Le Pont Neuf by Pierre Goustrenoir. As soon as I saw this scene, I knew that this was the piece. It had the exact feeling I was looking for inspiration. For this album, I took in a lot of chamber pop, singer-songwriter, and folk influences. I wanted to create a bunch of homey and intimate songs that kind of spoke to a lot of things that I am going through and was going through, including depression, fear and anxiety, and worries about the state of the world. So there's a lot of internal and external struggles on this record, mostly with myself and society. One of the other big themes on this record is nature. It's always been like a calming and grounding sort of thing for me. I wanted to be a meteorologist when I was a kid until I figured out that they were just guessing. So I started piecing a bunch of these song ideas together and making voice memos. Themes started emerging, and I started getting the cores of what the songs would eventually become.
Found a hole in the ground and it was perfectly shaped for my ego and big round head. I found a hole in the ground and it was perfectly shaped for my fears and doubts. I took one last look around and laid my secrets away where they will never be found.
So the first drafts of these songs started coming together in 21, 22. I then made some proof of concept demos and uploaded them into a Google Drive folder with a feedback form attached, and I asked people to rate what they thought about the lyrics and the music and everything like that, and I got a ton of helpful feedback that helped me refine the drafts into the final versions that you hear on the record. I was super grateful for everybody who responded, and I got a bunch of really good information, and sometimes there's things you want to confirm your own suspicions about. Sometimes it's something that you would not have seen just from your perspective. So thanks to all these people that you see on the screen for contributing feedback for the record and making it happen in their own little way. Thank you so much. Once I was finished revising these songs, I had to figure out how I was going to record them for realsies. I wanted to hire musicians to play all of the orchestral parts and book studio time for all that to happen. And then I looked at my wallet, and my wallet looked at me, and we exchanged some words, and we decided I should record it myself. Yeah, so a lot of the record was tracked on my trusty Yamaha P45. That digital keyboard came in clutch. My sound philosophy for this album is all based around piano, bass, and drums as the foundation, and then adding in different orchestral layers depending on what the song called for. For example, The Hand of Man is very trumpet and horn heavy. Sometimes It's is supposed to be very solitary and lost, so it's just reverby piano. And Nothing has this melodica in there, which is kind of like a blend of childhood joy and like some bluesiness to it. So there's a combination of real instruments such as tambourines, melodicas, the bass guitar, and then virtual instruments to fill in the gaps. And yeah, I do finger drums instead of programming to add some more realism to the take. Once the arrangement's in place, for the most part, I start tracking vocals, and this is a fun and a challenging part of the process. What do you think, disembodied possible documentary viewer? Should I keep going? Mascara. Recording vocals is always a lot of fun. Once you kind of zone into the lyrics and you're feeling the track around you, you can kind of just drive it home and get into that zen mode where you kind of wrote the lyrics in initially. That's when I feel like I'm getting a really good take. I didn't really plan out the harmonies with the demos, and that created a cool opportunity at the end of everything to kind of listen for gaps that I felt could be kind of accentuated or played with. Oh no, I fall apart. And it's easy to go too far. Lunch. You know what they say about lunchtime. It's crunch time. You know why they say that? Because many foods are crunchy. Not this though, this is nice and tender. One of the difficult things about producing your own stuff is having to go from writing to revising to tracking to arranging and recording, the whole thing, and kind of having to get into a different mode or switch hats doing so, and especially getting a more critical ear once you're later on in the process and trying to separate yourself from the work and such. But at the same time, there's some greatness to be found in it, because you don't have to worry about being lost in translation, and if you can kind of step back and take care of each role somewhat independently, you can hopefully come out with something that's close to your intended vision. I went through a lot of stuff putting this record together, and it was very cathartic to come to the end and put all the pieces together in a way that I was very proud of. And I hope it brings some joy into people's lives and maybe helps them through a tough time. You know, art. Speaking of which,
Sweet. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for making the amazing art for this record. For the
Oh, for sure.
many time I've said. So this is like one of the earlier pictures, right? I
Yep.
like I just want me at a piano sprawled over it. So we got this anatomical model.
Something we were talking about, and from the sketch that you gave me, was like a really weird, contorted, like you're trying to play and it doesn't quite fit and it looks really distorted. So I was like, cool. I remember playing on the piano when I was a kid backwards, and it was bad. So that's kind of where I was going with this one, was how do we make that visual discomfort happen while we still get across the point that like you are tied to this instrument. You are physically working on it or being worked upon by it.
Yeah, that's a good turn of phrase. I forget at what point, but at some point you were like, "What if you were in the painting?" And then like we got this work, and so like, how did you come up with that idea and then start to throw it in?
I think it was around the time you told me the name of the album. You said it was Pont Neuf and it was, inspired or partially based on this painting. So I was like, oh shit. Well, what if we just combine the elements? If that's such a big part of your creative process on your end, like why don't we just transfer that over and actually see if we can like kind of combine the two? What if you're playing in this painting and nobody's paying attention? I actually had to crop a bunch of the buildings to force that angle in to make it look like you were actually on the ground level.
That's wild.
Yeah. Those buildings are all like cut in half.
That's awesome. Let's see. So then it went to this. My initial idea was like falling on top of the piano and
Falling was definitely a word that you threw my way initially too, because I remember sitting there like at the iPad thinking, how am I going to make this pose? And like trying to like lay on my couch weird and thinking to myself, nah, a couch isn't about the right height. I need to go like lay on top of somebody's car. And I was like, how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to get that picture without it being super weird?
we switched to this one here.
This, I think, is when when we started talking more like depressive tones. Like, oh god, how did you initially describe it? I think it literally was just like, rather than like falling on top of it, it is just more of a like you are just slumped.
Yeah, kind of like defeated at it. I guess like talk through like the final stretch.
So the final stretch was mostly cleaning things up and getting like the shadows under the piano right, making sure the people around actually fit perspective wise. A lot of it was also color matching and trying to make sure that you stood out but fit into the world at the same time. So that's why I kind of went like a darker blue. I pulled colors directly from a lot of this. So the joy of doing digital is you can just be like, I want that and just take it.
Yep.
So a lot of the colors on the piano, on the shirt, I think I took your skin tone from like a couple people standing around you, all came from the painting directly, and then trying to go like a step further to make them pop just a little bit more.
You kind of invented this like last little corner. Like it really does feel like it could have just been part of the initial painting.
I tried to follow the same curve. So you can see kind of in the background, it's all of these alcoves that kind of go um, all the way back, these little like vantage points over the river. I tried to match it at least to the top part of the curves in the back. I'm really proud of this one. This one was a lot of fun to work on because again, it already like touched on a bunch of skills that I have with uh, matching texture, color, all of that, but also like adding something fresh in there. And my personal favorite thing to do with art is to add like weird things in the background, or like add things that look like they should be there that clearly shouldn't, which was kind of the whole point of this one. I mean, this one was, I think, the most straightforward out of the three that you gave me. We talked about still having some kind of hopeful elements to it because I listened to the song on repeat when I was doing this. It was like, all right, how do I like make this feel like the music? Um, so we did have some of that hopefulness kind of like coming through, silver lining on the trees, all that fun stuff. And then I went through and originally to make this, I found like a collage of like all these people hiking, and then forced the perspective a little bit, found some elements to really like lead into you in a moonbeam right in the center there. And I used a lot of different textures in this one, which is probably the most fun thing to do, especially because like my medium is typically acrylic and not digital. So being able to just go buck wild with it was honestly really a treat.
The more you dig into it, the more you see
Mhm.
like all these little fine touches. I love that these textures over here and stuff. And
Well, something I tried to do with all of them too is I tried to make every single one of them super painterly so that they all tied into the actual like main album itself. So you've got the singles which are painterly and then the actual in a painting. I like to do something that fits the music and vice versa. So we just kind of get this whole thing that all ties together in the end. It's been really fun listening to the demos.
Yeah,
I really dug
I
it.
had a lot of fun with that one. It was definitely more into the like feeling the void and kind of being consumed by it. And then something I thought of too was what's the opposite of just an entire lack of color? I was like, what if that like light fracturing kind of like colors in weird places? So I threw that on the glasses to really emphasize it. I think I kept for Avoid the Void the colors around the edge of the mirror, that kind of like rainbow spectrum.
This is like the final iteration.
Yeah, so Avoid the Void took on a couple different things. I know it started off with that first one of literally just in a void, kind of being captivated by this mirror. But I kept a lot of the same things that we talked about previously. So we still kept it in a profile. We still kept the reflection on the glasses and kind of the weird abstract event horizon on the mirror. And then we just put it into a more realistic space, which was a lot of fun for me, actually. I got to hide some of those Easter eggs. Like you can see the actual Pont Neuf painting in the background there.
That's like my favorite little touch. And when you sent it to me, I noticed it, but not right at first. And
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, look at this over here.
This one is probably the hardest one to work on.
This one,
Mhm.
I would have thought that there would have been like a major challenge in the integrating of the new with the old on the cover art.
So my degree in scenic painting actually really comes into play with that one. I'm really good at style matching, texture matching, like kind of smooshing together or creating something out of something else is kind of my specialty. Something I really enjoy too. With this one, it was almost like make a completely original piece, but with these elements in it, and also like sort of akin to this style. Not exactly, but like in the same world. I love the more personal touches of actually working one on one with people and being like, all right, what's the theme? What's the vibe? Instead of here's the prompt, have at it.
Pont Neuf, the song that started it all, as in the album. Like I was saying earlier, when I found the painting, I just went right to work. I started taking in what I was seeing and trying to picture myself in that place and what it would be like to live during that time. The more I was writing, I felt like I was getting what I wanted to across. I didn't want to be too explicit or cliche with my lyrics, so I kept them somewhat sparse and tried to just convey musically the feeling of being transported. Avoid the Void, the second single and one of 3 songs on this record addressing some aspect of my bipolar depression. This one is about extreme isolation from cyclical intrusive thoughts, very low self-worth, just being trapped in your own head. So the void is that idea of being unable to escape from this kind of negativity. I initially started writing it as a song called I Found a Hole in the Ground, which ended up being the bridge. And, I was trying to piece those 2 bits together. They were actually quite similar, same chord progression, just a different melody. And then eventually I settled on taking the verses and wildly changing the beat and the pulse of it to kind of add this disorientation aspect to the song with the sparsity of what the void would feel like for me. The Moon, the first single from this record, I wrote as a metaphor for a falling out I had with a friend. I started writing it on acoustic guitar, belting out the chorus, stuck with that section for a while, and then as I was healing from the falling out, I put in more sections to kind of see it from a different angle. And the moral of the story is essentially, you shouldn't have someone in your life as your guiding star when they should be something that comes and goes, and you should appreciate them for what they do offer into your life. Nothing is a song I wrote about the concept of anhedonia, a fancy word for not being able to find joy in stuff that should. So when I'm in a depressive episode, there are times when I feel so detached from myself that I won't even engage in things that would typically be great, because I know that I'm not going to be able to appreciate them for what they are, and I'm stuck in this state of nothing really pulling my heart. The opening line for this song is, I put on my headphones, but there was nothing there, which is an example of me having decision paralysis listening to a track because I don't think anything's going to actually make me feel what I want to. As One Door Closes. This song came directly from an improvisation I did on piano one day. Sometimes I'll sit at an instrument and I'll pull out my voice memo app and I'll just go to town, just expressing what I'm feeling at the moment. And this one just really captivated me in a certain way, and I decided to add orchestration to it and embellish what it was trying to deliver. There was actually supposed to be 3 or 4 instrumentals on this album, but I decided to cut it down for the flow and to keep things spicy. Starts to Fall. I feel some people might listen to this song and think, what's the metaphor they're going for here? Don't worry, there is none. I just simply really like rain. I grew up in Arkansas, and we used to get flash flood warnings so often, I did not understand the point. We would get thunderstorms constantly, and I developed a special relationship with that relaxing sort of vibe, and I just decided to write a very innocuous song about the joy that it does bring me whenever a thunderstorm rolls around. Sometimes It's. I wrote this song about a year before I even suspected I had bipolar disorder, but it really describes the symptoms to a T. From having breezy times in life where everything's awesome and great and I'm able to get a lot of stuff done, to suddenly finding myself in a pit of despair and not wanting to be the person I am anymore. And the verses have a lot of ideas of fear and confusion and just being lost. The Hand of Man. I wrote this song about the creation of God by man, and the refrain talks about writing it on a tablet and making decrees to the men, and that's about the leaders of organized religion using it as a way to pass edicts on to their followers. I started writing this song actually June 24th, 2022, one day before Roe v. Wade was overturned, and that was my impetus to finish it. So, We Could See the Day, the final track, I wrote on a flight home to Denver when we were suffering the worst air quality in the entire world. I was viscerally taken aback when I saw the extra layer of gray clouds and a blood red sun that was draping the entire cityscape. I've always felt passionate about the impacts of climate change on our world, and I wrote this song about humanity's collective indecision and slowness to react to what we're doing to the world. We Could See the Day, Our Memories Reach the Horizon, is about the end of us as a species due to this indecision. Wow. Thanks for watching my whole video. I appreciate it. Goodbye.